Yeah, so when I, funny story, when I submitted my idea for this talk, like I knew Liz was going to give the keynote, and I was like, it's fine. Like, it's 2 days of presentations. There'll be plenty of time for at least a couple of talks on observability, right? There is no way that they will put me directly to be compared with one of the best speakers on observability in the country. So great, thank you very much. Top work. I'd like to pay my acknowledgement to the Dwyer people whose land on which we stand. That land was never ceded. I'd like to pay my respects to their elders past and present. So this is a talk about unlocking the value of observability. I am new to the observability space. I was an engineering manager for observability at Nine. I'm currently a senior engineering manager for SRE at Ping Identity, also focused on observability. But I'm still quite new to the whole observability space. So I'm hoping that you will get like the expert's opinion and the novice's opinion here about like the joy and excitement that I get from talking about observability with people. And I have been talking with a lot of industries and a lot of other different teams about observability, and there is a very common refrain when you talk to people at the moment, and it's this. We spend so much on observability and just don't feel like we're getting value from it. And that is pretty consistent across the industry. I've talked to banks, I've talked to media, I've talked to all kinds of people and all kinds of teams, from directors down to like engineering teams, and pretty much everybody says some version of this. And I think it's kind of important to think about how we got here as an industry and sort of what sort of happened, so that we know that what the history is, so that we can kind of see possibly what the path out might be. And I think what happened was that when we started moving originally from this idea of monitoring and like, is my stuff up or down, to what we now think of as observability, which is a much deeper kind of understanding of the things that we care about. In a lot of cases, we kind of took the easy paid route, right? Like, vendors promised this kind of effortless observability. So you just drop in an agent, an APM, click a button, and it will send the telemetry directly to their vendor backend that will produce this amazing kind of experience for you when you have an issue. But what we kind of uncovered was that when you actually had an incident in those situations, you had a lot of shallow telemetry and shallow information that was sort of, you knew something was down, but you couldn't really kind of deeply introspect or uncover what the root cause of the problems were. And the answer to that was manual instrumentation, but we weren't really willing to commit to that because, well, we'll get into that. But like, the vendors then responded with like more and more surface level features that they were building based on shallow auto instrumentation. So now you're kind of in a situation where we're paying for more and more features from a vendor, but they don't give us the depth that we're looking for. And the answer that we kind of are looking for is manual instrumentation, right? We've got to kind of go in and add the pieces of telemetry that we care about the code and the business things that we are writing. But that's also a frustrating situation to be in, because when the vendor says, well, okay, you just go and add some manual instrumentation, currently the situation is like, what? To your kind of like APM, your vendor-based APM? Like, I've got to tie myself more tightly to a frustrating relationship that I already have, just to sort of, see if I get more value that's not guaranteed. So it kind of feels like a bit of a betrayal of the original sort of like ease of instrumentation that was promised. And it stops us from making progress. Like, this whole kind of tension and this vicious circle kind of stops us from making progress. But if you take anything away from this talk, it's this. Like, I genuinely do not believe that you can rely on someone else's roadmap to improve your own observability. If you are expecting a solution from a vendor to give you what you want or what the value that you think you should be getting from your observability, you are always going to be disappointed, right? We have to do work ourselves. But with that sort of little mini history lesson out of the way, I just kind of also want to just take a second to really think more deeply about, like, or talk about what we actually think about as when we talk about observability and what we think about when we talk about value. Because we have like the standard definition of observability, which is like the system's definition of the ability to understand a system's internal state by analysing external outputs, right? That's traditional definition. Charity Majors has another definition which is similar but like a bit better from my perspective, in the ability to ask any question about the internal state of a software system without having to ship new code to get the answer. And I like that definition, and like that's what I personally strive towards. Another definition I kind of like is from Hazel Weekly, which is the process with which one develops the ability to ask meaningful questions, get useful answers, and act effectively on what you learn. And I like Hazel's definition because it kind of centres action, which I genuinely think is a really important part of observability. Like, valuable observability for me tells me instinctively what I should do next, right? But all of these definitions are true and good, but I feel like they kind of also miss something that I feel is very core to observability. And they're very sort of systems focused. And they're also, in some ways, some of them can feel frustrating if you're not there yet. If you are not someone who is in control of your vendor choice, or who your company has just signed another 2-year deal with your current observability vendor and now you are kind of stuck with it, it doesn't feel like you necessarily have the ability to kind of make broad change that reflects what these definitions kind of expect. So my definition currently for observability is that observability is the cartography of change. And in the same way, like, cartography is the art, science, and tooling of exploration of space. And so cartography was how people grew their understanding of an unknown world, right? And in the same way, observability is the art, science, and tooling of navigation and exploration of change. So whether that's the sudden, unintended, catastrophic change of an incident or the measured everyday change of planned delivery, our observability is valuable if it helps us pilot those situations with confidence, right? That's, for me, that's great observability. So this is a Marshall Island stick map. The shells represent islands, and the sticks represent ocean waves or swells between them. So the thing about this map is that it's actually not useful unless you understand how to interpret it. So the story of the map is as important as the artifact of the map itself. And observability is very similar. Like, telemetry alone is insufficient without the shared knowledge that goes with it. So the first step to getting value out of your telemetry or your observability is that your telemetry needs institutional knowledge. This means runbooks. This means definitions of key concepts. This means tutorials, documentation. All of these things are the foundational layer of valuable observability, no matter your tools or vendor. So observability value depends on shared understanding. And it's important to leave signposts, because the person coming after you is invariably yourself 6 months later. Oops, sorry, wrong way. And a good graph tells a story. I think we've all seen something similar to a graph like this. But as a manager, some of the best conversations I've had both with my direct reports and the people I report to are based around telling a story using a graph. And it is the most helpful way of showcasing value and work done that I've ever encountered as both a developer and a manager. So observability is a storytelling tool that we should be using. So cartography also helps you answer questions. This is one of my favorite contemporary maps ever created. What is interesting, I don't think I need to explain what this map is. But the interesting thing about this map is that it is not a precise representation of London, right? We know that. Like, it is designed to help you answer a question of how to get from place to place, but you would not use it to navigate. And the thing is that we should be explicit, initially at least, of the questions we are trying to answer with the observability that we're trying to get to, right? If we can't name the question that a dashboard is trying to answer, then that dashboard probably isn't really that useful, right? It shifts dashboards from being just data dumps to actually decision-making tools. And the bottom piece of like make the titles of your dashboards and panels a question is just a personal opinion of mine, but I actually find this a really, really effective way of helping people get context when they are presented with a new dashboard or when they are just dumped into a situation. Making the panels a question actually helps encourage conversation. I can give an example. I made a dashboard that was originally customer errors across all sites at 9. So all the Sydney Morning Herald and The Age and all of that sort of the publishing side of things. And I showed it to a bunch of people and it was interesting and great and that was fine. And then I changed the title of it to how many errors are the customers currently seeing? And one of the principals went, oh, okay, that's wrong. Because what I was doing was I was actually looking at the application errors, which was fine and correct for the original panel that I had. But he pointed out that all of the sites have a CDN in front of them, and the CDNs are configured to, when the application sends an error, the CDN will try and send a cached version, so serve on error. And so to get what I wanted, I had to actually get the real-time metrics out of Fastly. So I got there, but it took having that conversation and encouraging that kind of like curiosity and using a question to have that conversation. The other big one is you don't just use a map when you're lost, right? Like if we are just using our observability and incidents, we are never going to get real value out of our observability. So I very strongly believe that everybody should have a dashboard that they can look at every single day. And I think that we should be looking about and thinking about observability beyond our services and applications. So this means things about observing your deployments, your pipelines, your tests, all of your business processes, your all of the other things that go into our delivery. And this is where the real untapped value of observability really is, in my opinion. Like, beyond the incidents and into reflecting and introspecting on intentional change, not just the sudden catastrophic change. Cartography really took off when it embraced standards. So things like global positioning systems, GPS, GIS of geographic information systems, coordinate systems, these are what enabled the global interoperable mapping ecosystem that lets us have our phones show us where to go. I think observability is kind of at that moment now. And the OpenTelemetry is our GIS moment. So OpenTelemetry is the standard I'm kind of going to assume that most people have kind of at least know what OpenTelemetry is here and not really explain it, but the promise of OpenTelemetry is what will help us break out of that vicious cycle that we talked about at the beginning. Right? If we implement OpenTelemetry, the promise is kind of portable telemetry, and it's true. We've done this successfully in a previous company at 9, but to be honest, I think it's a little oversold as like a value for OpenTelemetry. You can shift vendors, but moving your telemetry fire hose is just one part of the problem. Like, you've got to kind of rebuild all your dashboards. You have to retrain all your developers in new incident processes. You have to rewire all your alerts. There's a lot of other work than just kind of pointing the telemetry fire hose at a new vendor and winning all the things. But at least it is possible now. But one thing that I don't think is oversold around OpenTelemetry is the semantic conventions that come with it. And that's the standardized way of defining attributes and gives us a shared language of understanding. And if you're an SRE that is responsible across multiple applications or multiple services, that semantic convention system is extraordinarily helpful. So being able to write dashboards that you know will work across multiple services, knowing that there is going to be consistency about how databases are defined in your telemetry when you are trying to dig through a problem is a huge benefit. And manual instrumentation on OpenTelemetry is, like I said, what's going to help us break the cycle for vendor issues. Because when you add manual instrumentation to your OpenTelemetry, it is information that you get to take with you everywhere you go. You are not writing it onto a vendor APM that you need to rewrite when you swap vendors. It is now a return on investment that lasts with you forever. You just get it. So this is why I think this is worth investing in. This is what gives us the future. Lastly, cartography is inspirational. So this is the map that sits on the wall of my 6-year-old's bedroom. And despite it being more aesthetic than accurate, he loves it. We have long, detailed conversations about the world and the cultures and people and places. And he talks about all the cultures and things that he wants to go and visit and all the places he wants to see. And I want observability to do the same for us. I want it to be out of our incidents, and I want it to be an inspiration of what might be possible and what we could change and explore next. So I think that we should be taking a small step. Like, everyone should be taking a small step. So like, look at adding OpenTelemetry to auto instrumentation to your simplest service. Add a manual span to a critical code path. Rewrite one dashboard as a question. Add one piece of institutional knowledge to a document. Add semantic conventions to one of your services. I don't think you need to have a 6-month project to get started on this. I think you can really build observability the way maps were built, one meaningful mark at a time. Thank you.